So we just got the season 1 finale for Loki. It means big things for the MCU, so let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your thoughts on season 1 of Loki as well as the finale. If you haven't seen the episode yet, you have been warned. This is a spoiler review, so if you're commenting, feel free to spoil away down below in the comment section. 2 more things before we get started. If you're interested in one of these variant shirts, people have been asking me where I got it down below in the comment section. I have pinned a comment with a link to where I bought it. Second thing, there is a companion video to this over on Patreon. It's my whole season review of Loki season 1, the good, the bad. It's 15 minutes long talking about everything. Join at any level and you can unlock that video and hundreds of other videos and hundreds of live streams. Link is down below in the description, and let's get started with my general thoughts. And for me, it was a solid conclusion to the season. This show has been all about the journey of Loki Phase 1 and Sylvie on their paths to figure out who is behind the curtain, who is Oz the Great and Powerful, who is running the time stream, and each of their different motivations and trying to figure that out in different goals. This episode actually resolved that and had big consequences for the show in general, as well as the MCU as a whole. It introduced us to a character who's going to be a major player moving forward in the MCU, or at least in one more project, we know that much. And so then you got character moments, you got resolution to our 2 lead characters' journey within the show, you set up important things for the future, and you did some things happen that actually mattered. And on the flip side to it, it is very talky. It's an exposition heavy finale. And so, yeah, I would have preferred that maybe if it wasn't just people standing in a room talking the entire episode, but what they were talking about was interesting stuff. Once you get to the end of the episode, like all the cards are on the table, all the conversations have been had, you start thinking like, okay, what if is coming in a month? Seems pretty clear how that could tie into all of this. December, we got Spider-Man No Way Home. Seems like it's going full multiverse in all the fan servicey ways that we want. Into Multiverse of Madness coming next year. Ant-Man, the guy that's introduced in this episode, he's the main villain. And so you just see this when you go to where it branches off. You see all these branches happening and you go, yeah, that's what the future of the MCU is. And so it felt consequential. It felt like it mattered. It informed things. When these other projects start coming out, people that skipped Loki, you feel like they're going to have an absence. They're going to want to go back and rewatch this. Whereas, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, kind of filled in some gaps as to exactly the process of how Sam picked up the shield. I'm sure U.S. Agent is going to return in some sort of Dark Avengers or Thunderbolts or something like that. And so it introduced some characters. This one felt like it shook the MCU in a meaningful way in light of everything that they've told us that's coming. And Kevin Feige said that this show has big ramifications for the MCU Phase 4 as a whole. That seems about right based off what they said here. From there, let's do our walkthrough of the episode. And the episode itself cut pretty quickly back and forth between TVA and Citadel quite a bit. I'm going to reorganize a little bit of that because I don't want to keep jumping back and forth. Episode kicks off with these overlapping quotes from the MCU, and then it starts overlapping with quotes from like famous historic figures saying things, and we're like zooming through the galaxy, kind of hearing all of these quotes take place, even some from WandaVision. And we start zooming in on the castle place that was at the end of the last episode with Phase 1 and Sylvie walking towards it while there's clouds and intergalactic universe type stuff spinning around them. And it picks up with the 2 people walking up, and they pause for a moment. They kind of quibble about like kicking in the door, and she's like, "No, I just need to pause." And he's like, "What? Are you nervous?" And she's like, "No, like I was pruned before you were ever born." I've been waiting for this moment right here. Like, my whole life has been about getting to this moment right here where I figure out who's there. And I just need to, like, pause for a moment and breathe. Like, it's really happening. This is what I've been waiting for. And here we are about to do this. And then while she's pausing for a moment, the doors just open and they start walking inside of it. And Miss Minutes just pops up right in front of you with like a jump scare, which is the funniest jump scare because it's, you know, this old style cartoon talking to them, not remotely actually intimidating in of itself, but because she just like pops up, you're just walking in, starts talking to them about the Citadel at the end of time, and starts alluding to, you know, he wants to offer you a deal that you can take it right now. You know, you can just, you don't need to go any further. You can have everything you've ever wanted. Phase 1, like, you can be the person that wins the battle in New York. You can kill Thanos. You can get the Infinity Gauntlet. You can have a timeline wherever you want. And the two of you can be together. You won't have to be alone. And whatever timeline you want, he'll give it to you. And Sylvie's like, nah, it's fiction. And Phase 1 is like, we write our own destiny. And so they're not interested in deals. They're not interested in just living in a fantasy. They want to actually free this thing. Different reasons, different perspectives on it. But the fantasy isn't really a temptation for them. Giving them whatever they want isn't tempting because what they want is freedom, not their own playground. It's whatever they want, but it's still just fenced in. They want the fence gone. So they keep walking in, and like this chamber opens, and there's just a dude there eating an apple. And as soon as you see him, if you've been following cast news for the MCU over the last year, you immediately realize where this is headed. Last December, they told us Jonathan Majors was cast as Kang in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So you see this guy, and you can't really make out who he is, but it's pretty clear where this is headed. Kang the Conqueror is behind all of this. That's what a bunch of us have been saying all along. And my reason for saying that was that he'd already been cast, and then the details fit to like that's where this was headed. Not some great insightful genius. It's like literally the person that they told us that they had cast that fits the bill of this show. The backstory of this character and what he does, where he's from, stuff involved with him would make sense that it would tie to the TVA, and he'd be the one behind it. So it's him. Though I don't believe they said the name Kang in this episode. He just referred repeatedly as He Who Remains. And just kind of this human guy, energetic personality, chomping on an apple, and doesn't come off all that adversarial towards them. Like, hey guys, you made it here finally. All right, let's get in the elevator. Let's go upstairs. Let's start talking. And as they're in the elevator, Sylvie, her mission all along is to kill this guy. That's what she's always wanted to do. So right there in the elevator, she's just like, tries to stab him, and he moves out of the way. She's not able to do it. She tries it several times. They make it up to the top, and he's at his desk, and lets him know, like, I know everything you're going to do. Like, I know everything. Like, everything you're going to say, I have heard it all, seen it all, so I can outmaneuver whatever you're going to do. This isn't a trick, not one of your mirages or anything like that. I know, therefore, you can't outmaneuver me. And then it starts tying back to the show's concepts of like free will and everything like that. And he's like, I paved the way for you to get here. Like, since I knew everything you were going to do, every step along the way was set up by me that you would lead to this exact moment where we could have this little conversation. Which there's a side to that's interesting because it ties into the philosophy of the show of every time they think they're doing something freely, turns out that there's something behind the curtains actually maneuvering the pieces to make it happen. Then there's this other side to it of like, okay, if his master plan was, I just want these two people to end up here, what was what's the whole point of all jumping through all the hoops? And they kind of try and write it off like, well, the journey is important. The journey is what transforms you. It's actually like storytelling 101 type stuff. The important part is the journey that causes the transformation. And at the same time, if you're like, I'm not quite sure, that feels a little bit like you're saying the thing that you need to say to have an excuse for why the person did the most convoluted way to get to this moment. Because that's like a lot of hoops you got to jump through to have this conversation. And so I'm not like, okay, I can kind of buy it. There's a side to me also that's like, I don't know, is this was really the best way to get to this moment? Was all of those specific things you orchestrated so that they'd be transformed as we get here? That'll bring us back to the TVA. So back at the TVA, Boss Lady meets with Miss Minutes. And if you recall previous episode, she met up with Miss Minutes and says, hey, give me everything about the start of the universe and timeline, timekeepers and everything like that. So she asks for something really specific about the history of the TVA and everything. Miss Minutes gives her a pad and says, he hands it to her. And she's like, hey, this isn't what I asked for. And she's like, he thought this would be even more useful for you. So there's something in there that she reads that is supposed to be even more juicy or important for her. She reads it and is apparently transformed by it. And then it cuts. And this is where I didn't want to keep cutting back and forth between all of these because that's like that whole sequence was very short and didn't really tell us what it was about. So hopping back, Mobius, who at the end of the last episode goes back to the TVA, he kicks in Boss Lady's door to confront her. And basically, it's like two friends who end up on very opposite sides of something for... both of them have kind of had their world shattered. And Mobius, his interpretation is like, we were lied to. How could we possibly continue to work for these people that lied to us? Like, we can't do that. And her interpretation is all of this couldn't have been for nothing. So I can't accept that this was all for nothing and I was just a pawn. Therefore, I'm going to keep heading down the path. So Mobius refuses to continue down this path. And she's like, hey, everyone's not going to keep following you now that they know your secret. And then it cuts to Ohio 2018. And we're just at a school. Cop lady's being chased by some TVA agents. She runs to an office. TVA agent runs in to like arrest her. They just kind of pause for a moment. And then Ravonna walks in. And she's like she's known by the last name and everything, but she's a principal at this school. And you kind of see the real her. She was a principal. This is what she's supposed to be doing right here in Ohio in 2018. And kind of revealing to this other TVA agent, she's a variant. Our boss is a variant. We're all variants. That's how all of this works. We've been lied to. Stop doing what you're doing because this is a problem. So the sunken costs fallacy. She's invested too much of her life into it. She's not willing to just accept her losses and move on. She's like, no. Because I put so much into this, I have to keep putting more into it. I can't quit now because I've just spent too much on it. I can't give it up. And so both of them perceive of the others betraying them. From Boss Lady's perspective, Mobius, after all these eons of friendship and working together, learned some new information and just turned on everything they believed in. From his perspective, she killed him. Like, we found out the truth. He responded appropriately to the truth and she killed him or tried to kill him through all of that. And so they kind of have this moment where it's like, it looks like we just see things very differently. Mobius isn't going to let her continue doing all this, so he tries to attack her. She's able to outpower him, throws him to the ground. And she's kind of standing there ready to prune him once again, probably kill him for good this time. But she's like, has enough of a change of heart that she's not going to do that to her friend. She realizes like he has pure motives in all this. So she doesn't want to do that. So she uses her pad and goes through a portal. We don't know where. And that's what's kind of fun about this show versus with kind of where they end things and in comparison to the other Marvel Disney Plus shows is that this one, they already have a season 2 in mind. And so it plays like an actual TV show. It's not, this season it's not supposed to resolve every plot line every moment. It's supposed to resolve the main storyline, which happens. And like the goal is to figure out who's behind the curtain. We find out who's behind the curtain. But it also sets up all these threads. Like what did she learn? What did he want to tell Boss Lady? What was on the pad? Where did she go? What's this journey that she's on? Of self-discovery and everything like that. And so then she takes off and we don't see her again. This brings us back to the Citadel and we continue down Exposition Road and we get some massive exposition from the one who remains. And basically he says, so a variant of me in the 31st century discovered that there's a multiverse, all these universes stacked on top of each other. And then all the other versions of him from the other timeline started to discover the exact same thing. And they started trying to communicate, work with each other. There's a bit of harmony. And then eventually it turned into war. And a war of the timelines broke out. So mirrors the story that we heard in episode 1. Similar sort of concept, just stripped away kind of the mythological aspect to it's more scientific. It's in the future. And they discovered this. And then some people were good about that. And some people wanted to control it. And then it starts turning into all out multiversal war 1,000 years in the future from now. So this one, this variant that we're talking to right now, somehow figured out how to, or through the rips in the timeline, everything was taking place. Somehow I guess that creates the Alioth, the creature from last week. And somehow this version of the character is able to harness that in order to take control and win this timeline war. Creates the TVA to stop the chaos and bring order to everything. So kind of what we heard before, kind of different, a lot of different details in there. And I think at this point in time, it's kind of like, okay, so we've heard the same story twice. So we're kind of where we were at the beginning, just without the silly, clearly mythological side to it. Was still having its fantastical elements. Obviously, we're talking about the multiverse and creatures created by rips in the timeline. But at the same time, like there's some of this stuff like trying to even process everything that we learned in this episode. What does it mean for the show as a whole? What do I make of everything that we heard? How does it affect the MC timeline as a whole? Because in the one sense, we're following Phase 1 Loki. That's right in 2012, but 2012 is meaningless because the TVA is outside of time, and this moment we're happening right now is at the end of time. What does all that mean in terms of how does all this play out and mean? I'm not really sure. But he gets to the end of his story about the bringing order to the chaos of the time multiverse wars. And he's like, hey, I'm going to offer you guys a choice. You could lead this. I'll step down, you take over, and you run the timelines, or you kill me, and no one runs them, and the chaos and the wars continue, and the many versions of me take over. The evil me's end up winning because there's an infinite number of me's that are coming to try and take over the timeline, and the mean ones could actually be the one here, not me that wants order for all of this. And then there's like this little moment where there's like noise in the background. Like he says his pause and they're like, can we believe you? What's going on here? Pauses. And you see he's looking, and there's like a sound in the background. And then he goes, all right, we crossed the threshold. I fibbed a little bit. I did know everything was happening, but now we're at the point in time where I don't know anymore. I don't know what's going to happen anymore. You guys get to make your choice. Do you want to lead it all, or do you want to kill me and have chaos and have the other me's come? And you could just right there start to see like, oh, this is what Phase 4 is. This is who the villain is. This is how do you not try and top Thanos in Endgame, but how do you have something else that's interesting in a new way that ties into this multiverse? Infinite Kangs trying to harness the entire timeline in some sort of war of the universes. Well, that sounds like that sounds pretty interesting. Very different, but like just as big of stakes and massive in scope and size while being totally different from Thanos' plan. Anyway, Sylvie and Phase 1 have different opinions on this. Sylvie says, let's kill this guy. So she goes to stab him. Phase 1 stops her. And he's like, no, I want peace. Like, there's peace. There's harmony. And this guy's gone. There's all-out timeline war. And worse versions of this guy are coming. I'm not crazy about that plan. I don't want that to happen. But it turns into this conversation between the two of them where she's convinced all he wants is power. Like the reason he wants to do this is because he wants to sit there on the throne and rule the timeline. He hasn't changed. He's the same. And so he has this great moment where Phase 1 says to her, you can't trust and I can't be trusted. We got a problem here. It's do a little bit of sword fighting back and forth. And then it pauses for this moment where he's like, Sylvie, like, I don't care about the throne. I don't care about anything. All I care about is you. And Loki Phase 1 has been through this whole journey throughout the season of him learning to not just love himself, but care about others. And his ultimate gesture that he doesn't just love himself is that he falls in love with himself and kisses himself. Like, such a strange arc that they're doing with this character of like, his selfless act is to fall in love with himself. Okie dokie. That's an interesting place to take this. So he kisses himself. He truly has learned to love himself. But she goes, but I'm not you. Uses pad, opens a portal, sends him back to the TVA, kills the one who remains on the chair, and she ends up choosing the chaos. As Sylvie stabs the guy, he says, see you soon, because he knows that there's worse versions of him, and he doesn't really care if he dies. He doesn't really care if this goes down some other path. Or if they take control, it doesn't seem to matter too much to him. So she kills him, and he's almost like giddy about like, see you soon. Other versions of me are coming. And then you just kind of in the background in this, outside the castle in the cosmic realm where you can see the branches and the multiversions. I'm just mumbling noises. You can see the multiverses and you start to see the branches start to expand outward just a little bit. Cuts back to the TVA, and we see kind of this classic TVs from the TVA, and Cop Lady and Mobius are watching the TV, and you just see these paths expand further and further out. So Mobius and Cop Lady are standing there looking at a TV screen with the timelines branching off at the TVA. Mobius says, no turning back now. And she's like, who said anything about turning back? So in this moment, they seem to be very aware of the fact that this thing is branched off and it's broken, heading in different paths, and what just happened. Then it cuts to Loki sitting there just looking sad, like brokenhearted. He finally learned to love. And then the person wouldn't listen to him, pushed him away, and chose the chaos over trusting him. And so then he sits there and he stands up, runs down through the hallway as all the TVA agents are rushing to try and stop all these timeline nexus events that are taking place, but there's just too much. It's all happening out of control that it can't be stopped. Loki runs up to Mobius and Cop Lady, and they're having a conversation like, does he want us to try and send everyone to try and stop all these branches? And Loki's like, we were in the wrong, we made a mistake, we freed the timeline, we're in trouble. Mobius looks at him. He's like, what do you mean? Aren't you an analyst? Like, who are you again? And Mobius doesn't know who he is. Like, he doesn't recognize him at all. And so I don't know if, like, in the few moments between when all this happened, they reset, or if there's multiple different them there, whatever that means, they're perceiving it something. They don't know who Loki is and what they just did. They don't remember that just adventure that just took place, and they don't even seem to remember what happened for them 30 seconds ago of them looking at the TV. Their awareness seems to have dramatically changed. And so Loki's like, we broke the timeline, we freed the timeline, but like countless variations of a very dangerous man is coming. Like, what are you talking about? Who are you? And Loki looks out the window And instead of the 3 statues of the timekeepers, it's just 1 statue of the one who remains. Kang there. Season ends. Mid-credit scene isn't a mid-credit scene. It just is a card saying Loki will return in season 2. So what does it all mean? I don't really know, but what I do know is a month from now, the What If TV show is happening, which the whole point is, let's look at all these what if scenarios. Like if you changed this detail in the timeline and swapped this out, what are all the possibilities that could happen? Well, that seems like very much an extension of what this show is. That very much looks like, let's just play around with it. The whole show playing around with multiverse stuff. Then in December, Spider-Man No Way Home. All the rumor speculation is that our previous versions of Spider-Man movies somehow are going to merge in with this one, and Tom Holland is going to be playing around with all the characters of Spider-Man movies from the last 20 years. Well, that sounds like fun. Like they created a scenario where that makes sense, and then Multiverse of Madness next year, and then the villain for Ant-Man and the Wasp 3, Quantumania, is this guy that we just met. So that's where, like, you look at all this, like, I don't know how all this is playing. Like, I don't know exactly how it's a continuation, what all that means. I don't get it exactly. It's not clear how they tie together, but you can see how what happened here freed the timeline to create 4 future MCU projects. And this starts to feel a lot more consequential in light of that. So, solid finale. Answered some questions, teased some new ones, and did some stuff that makes you very excited for what's happening next in the MCU with Loki, but of course with all these other projects involving multiverse and alternate timeline type stuffs as well. So pretty cool stuff. Pretty exciting that this is where we're at with the MCU, that they could do all these wild and crazy things. And I don't know if you can top the Infinity Saga, but you could do something equally as big, massive, and comic booky. And that seems to be what they're trying to do here. And especially when you kind of look at some of the Phase 4 stuff, it's not as obvious like A-list characters. A lot of our A-listers kind of retired, and so they're doing a rebuilding phase. So how do you keep a level of intrigue and fun without necessarily having your A-team? Multiverse seems like a pretty fun way to do some stuff that's wild, crazy, interesting, and that's what they've set up here, and legitimately set it up, because Spider-Man Far From Home teased multiverse in the trailers, didn't really do it. WandaVision teased that we're doing multiverse, Quicksilver's here, and then it didn't do it. This one established clearly it's happening, here are the rules, here's what's happening, here's why it could be a very bad thing. And I appreciate that. Let me know what you thought down below. You can get one of these shirts at the link down below in the description. If you want that companion video with 15 more minutes of my thoughts of the season as a whole, the good, the bad, all that fun stuff, join me over on Patreon at any level and you can unlock that video. Link is down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.